Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Planning Commission podcast. Today's episode, Bikes, Bills, and Bucks, with Bill Nesper, Executive Director of the League of American Bicyclists.
The Planning Commission podcast is a discussion you never even knew you needed. Sit back, join us for a conversation between a couple of old friends and their guests to talk about all the things that are happening in this wide-ranging profession called planning. Our views are our own and don't reflect those of any national planning organizations or any particular public agencies and only belong to us. So read your commission packet, know your Robert's rules, and enjoy this, the Planning Commission podcast.
Hello, fellow commissioners. Let's take roll. Commissioner Minshaw, you here?
Present.
And Commissioner Kostelik.
Here and sporting a fresh tan.
That's hard to do for you. You're not exposed to the sun very often.
Yeah, I look the palest out of all of us, which that's different.
Oh gosh. So, yeah, let's not go down that road. I'm feeling that too. Here we are and approaching March in Boise, and yes, that's desperately want some sun. So anyway, all right, let's not digress any further than that. All right, so we're all here. Let's go over our agenda today for our discussion on a League of American Bicyclists. So we're going to go through our discussion item, our whiskey pairing, our interview with Bill Nesper, and our lightning round. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right, now let's just go into our discussion for our audience. As a reminder, man, head over to our website. You can go to all of our past meetings. Go to www.theplanningcommissionpodcast.com. Go to our YouTube page, Amazon, Apple. Please subscribe, like, and give us feedback. Email us, planningcommissionpodcast@gmail.com. All right. So today we're going to talk about the League of American Bicyclists and bicycling in America. We've kind of touched on it a little bit in a couple of episodes, but man, the league does a lot of stuff. That's kind of why the title of this is called what I called it, with bills meaning legislation and advocacy, and bucks certainly about funding initiatives at the state, local, and even federal level. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that the league does. And bicycling in general. Here's my question. It's a big one. What's the future of America in bicycling? Wow. Big, broad. Holy cow. That could go on forever and ever. In full disclosure, Don and I just came back yesterday, actually, from a work trip in Northern California where the discussion of bicycling was very present and lots of discussions of varying types of treatments, sort of a small town, rural environment, but heavy on the tourism and lots of people going there. And it got us thinking, like, what are we doing? Where are we headed in this? Are we going on the uptrend? Are we stalling out? Are we having some pushback? So I don't want to kick this off. I'll kick it to either of you. Don, I'm sure you probably have lots of thoughts on this, but I'll open it up to whomever wants to jump in first. What's the future of America and bicycling? Don?
It's like, Don, we're waiting. This is your topic.
I kind of want, it is, but I kind of want to see what you have as perspective.
So my perspective is very different than the both of you, because I have primarily worked in very suburban or rural communities, and I haven't historically been much of a bicyclist except for recreational bicycling. So I don't have a ton of perspective except the context between growth in suburban and rural areas and the importance of even facilities. It's still not really high on the radar in most places I've been around. I think it's definitely higher within urban areas. But as we're still seeing a lot of suburban sprawl in our areas and other places I've worked, I think we're at a bit of a crossroads, but there's still a big divide between people that are into the topic and care about it and people that it's an afterthought.
Yeah, well, I'll give Don a second here, just because I know you've got a lot, I'm sure. I'll jump in real quick and buy him some time. All right, so there's two issues that I'm interested in. One is a legal question that is happening in the Bay Area. So a group of businesses coming together to sue the city of San Francisco for the construction of what I believe is a cycle track, and they're saying an economic harm that has come from that. And if that ends up going in the way of those business owners, what what will that mean for other cities who are across the country are considering the similar types of treatments that San Francisco had? So that's one that I really have my eye on. I think that is, when you go through grad school and you learn of all of the Supreme Court cases, all the traditional Nolan, Dolan, Tigard, all those types of things, Euclid and Amber and all that stuff like that. I don't know if this would quite get to that level, but it's an interesting one if it ends up discussing public realm, public infrastructure, taking away a travel lane, and a private enterprise suing on behalf for economic toll. I don't know how that's going to go. So that's one. The other one is on the positive side. I've seen this, I think we've talked about this in the past, is that e-bikes, man, continue to grow in popularity. And we have a generation where they're retiring. We know this. Pickleball's taken over the dang world, and so too is e-bikes. And if e-bikes makes it easier to get around, and more people are going to be accessing them as the price comes down, more manufacturers are making them, renting them, et cetera, then I can't help but think that the demand for the infrastructure is going to continue to increase. And that's going to be all across the country, not just in urban areas, but heck, in some of those areas where people vacation, destination locations, resorts, and so forth. So I'm positive on that front because I see it as there's a great big bunch of wind hitting the sails of folks who've been in this world for quite some time. But if that San Francisco case goes the other way, and I'm going to say the wrong way, then boy, oh boy, that'll be really interesting to see how it unfolds. Anyway, Don, what do you got?
Yeah, I think without getting into the complexities of like state level business damages laws, that'll be an interesting one to follow. I agree on the e-bike side, but I think I would go from the infrastructure piece in the future. I think there's been, and I even think the league released some of the commuting data that came out, and there's some places that went down. It's relatively even in some areas. But I think we're in a phase where we still don't have complete networks, even in some of the urbanized cities, that we could achieve higher mode rates. And it's one thing I say to people, oh, we don't see nobody in that bike lane. Well, if our roads were as disconnected as our bike network was, nobody would be using the roads either. And so we've yet to reach a point in many places where that has occurred. However, and I'll use the Boise area here as an example, and it's kind of a flaw in our data. If we look countywide where Boise is, oh, we've got a 1%, 2%, kind of the typical. If we look citywide in Boise itself, it's a little bit more. But we have 5 or 6 census tracts in Boise that are achieving, 10, 12, 15% mode share for commuting by bike. And it shows what happens when you have a connection to our green belt and a series of either low speed, low stress streets or other pathways. So it's kind of like it took us however many years to get highway systems and all that put into place to make motoring the dominant mode. We're still not there yet in the maturation of a system of networks. And then on the e-bike side, I think, and given Sabrina's point about suburbanization, is somebody going to take a 10-mile commute by bike today each way on the right facility? Yes, but probably not in large numbers. However, add an e-bike to that mix, and I think that 10-mile one-way commute starts to look a lot different in people's eyes. What's the next rung of distance? Is it 15? Is it 20? That is maybe a smaller number. So I think where we've seen lower numbers from semi-suburban areas, the e-bike could help people overcome that.
Yeah. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think that the absolute number one characteristic of anything that is in our planning realm to succeed, that needs to be met to succeed, is that of time. If you get time figured out and make a ride 10 minutes and convenient and comfortable versus the bike or the driving piece of it, I think you're in there. So those straight lines, those connections, and to an extent e-bikes, I think we're getting there. But all right, Don, what do you got? Whiskey pairing. Let's change the channel here. What do we got for League of American Bicyclists?
We're going to go with another cocktail news. Maybe we should just change this to the cocktail or the potent potable pairing.
You just need to start pouring them up and providing them. That's the problem.
Yeah. We're going to go with an Italian-inspired one, a cocktail called the bicicletta, which is for bicycles.
Can you say it one more time?
A bicicletta.
That sounds like
BICICL.
something you need a prescription for, actually.
Ask your doctor if bicicleta is right for you. Side effects include
Yeah, go ahead.
so simple core. We've got 3 ounces of dry white wine, 2 ounces of Campari, which if you know Campari as an aperitif, it's pretty bitter and can dominate. Some club soda and then some orange wheels. So a very light wine-based cocktail. If a Campari is too much for you, go with the other Italian aperitif, Aperol. It's a little bit sweeter, still provides a little bit of the bitterness, but definitely softens that palate quite a bit. So there you go, bicicleta.
For such a sophisticated human being, how did you? I don't understand. I mean, I know your background of Ronald McDonald shows, Dukes of Hazzard. I know you, and look what you've sprouted into, this sophisticated worldly flower. It's bravo,
Most of the
brava,
audience, I don't think
brava.
most of the audience is going to realize you were being sarcastic of the sophistication background until you mentioned Dukes of
No,
Hazzards.
no. He's on his way, man. I appreciate him. He's bettering me. So I'm gonna have one of those this weekend if I can find all the ingredients. I won't
I
be
know
able to
you've got
pronounce it.
white wine.
I definitely have copious amounts of white wine. So anyway, all right. Well, good whiskey pairing. Let's take a quick second and thank our friends at Planet Edison for supporting today's podcast. If you are looking to sharpen your urban planning skills and advance your planning career, head on over to Planet Edison Courses, which offers over 300 courses on cutting-edge planning topics and skills such as parking reform, missing middle housing, equity analysis, and climate resilience. Visit courses.planedison.com/PC10 to take advantage of an exclusive offer for Planning Commission podcast listeners and Italian drink aficionados. All right, without further ado, let's introduce our person of the hour, Mr. Bill Nesper, who is the executive director of the League of American Bicyclists. Bill, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having
Good.
me.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
That drink sounds
So,
amazing. I think I, just got to jump in and say, I'm gonna need to find the show notes and make sure I make that on the weekend too.
Put that
yeah,
at the refreshment table at the bike summit.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
need a bicyclette sponsor. To make that happen. That sounds good.
I like it. I like it. All right, Bill, let's just jump in. I want to start with a little bit about yourself and certainly the League of American Bicyclists. I myself have gone through the 101 and skills course and the instructor course, and so is I think Dawn has. And we want to know all about the organization. You've done a lot of wonderful things, continue to do wonderful things. So tell us about you and Lab.
Well, thank you for having me and thank you for doing those courses and being interested in what the league does. And I'm glad to hear that it provided some value to you. And I appreciate the invitation and I appreciate the work that you all do at the local level, I guess in various places. You just talked about this trip to California. It sounded pretty awesome. So the League of American Bicyclists, we've been around since 1880. We were founded originally by, early enthusiasts, bicycling enthusiasts who at the time, were really excited about this new cycle and wanted to get together in groups and eventually to lobby Congress in the late 1880s and 1890s to get paved roads. So what became known as the Good Roads Movement. So the league has always been an association, a membership organization that's dedicated to promoting bicycling and cyclist rights to the road and the creation of new places to ride and the education to ride since the very beginning. So yeah, I don't know what the 101 class looked like back then. Maybe it'd be a good deep dive into our history. For most of the 20th century, the league was really a big bike club, America's bike club. It wasn't until the late 70s and 80s. In the 70s or 80s, we got much more involved with policy and education work. And today, the league we're based in Washington, D.C. We are still that membership organization. Most of our funding is coming from individuals and groups around the country who are enthusiastic about creating a bicycle-friendly America for everyone. And so we're made up of 200,000 members and supporters, 1,000 state and local advocacy organizations and bike clubs, and then thousands of businesses and universities and communities who are working together towards that goal of creating a bicycle-friendly America. for everyone. I think it's important to note, the league, one of the critical changes I think that we made, over that time, and as we reflect on like what we're doing now and where we came from, is that addition to our mission for everyone. While we are made up of individuals who are enthusiastic about bicycling, we serve anybody who we think everybody should be able to go on a bike ride. It should be safe, it should be comfortable, it should be accessible to them, and they should be able to do it as often as they want to do it. And so we are a network of change makers, really working to make that possible.
So a majority of our listeners, or I guess lots of our listeners, are in the planning profession, nonprofit profession, elected officials, hopefully more and more of those. Of all the things that you've described that League of American Bicyclists does and engages in, what kind of resources or how can our audiences use the work you're doing in their own work? Like what kind of resources are provided? How do they get engaged and involved, especially on the kind of policy side?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say number one, the resources, like why, planners, what does the league do for us? I guess, I mean, not to sort of sum up your question, but like one of the things that planners should know is that we're big fans of the work that you do, and we're your allies. If you want to make great places for people to walk and bike and get around, we are the grassroots cycling organization in Washington, D.C. And so the funding that comes down through those federal transportation bills every 5 years, we are the grassroots organization working in concert with other organizations like Rails to Trails and the industry trade association, People for Bikes. We're all working together to create more funding that trickles down, and hopefully more of it. So there's 60% more funding in that latest transportation bill, and our advocating for that on Capitol Hill is creating I believe our advocacy and showcasing and amplifying the voices at the local level is creating more funding. So those one resource is that there's 60% more funding to create bike lanes and bike paths and all sidewalks and all sorts of other safety infrastructure, and all sorts of discretionary funding to build those sorts of things. And we've been lobbying hard. The bike lobby is lobbying very hard to make sure that funding is there. I think in addition to that, resources on. We just talked about ridership briefly. How's it going? Where's it going best at the national level? We think it's really important to help folks make the case for the projects that they're doing at the local level. This always eventually gets down to the local level and the projects that you're working on and the plans that you're trying to develop and implement. So we have resources on what are the various funding streams and how do you access them and what what's working and what isn't working. I recommend using our website bikeleague.org and looking at those resources. And we have a webinar series. I think those are some good examples of a real strength area for us. In addition to that, at the local level, our Bicycle Friendly America program, it's a big program for us where we evaluate and recognize and create a roadmap for communities, businesses, and universities to become more bike friendly, from infrastructure to education to engagement to equity and accessibility, and of course evaluating what you're doing in those. In all those areas, we're providing direct reports, to communities and businesses and universities on what they can do. I think we've seen a great relationship with the internal advocates or the local planners, in the now around 500 communities around the country that have received the designation as bicycle friendly communities, but also the other 500 that have gotten the reports on, hey, here's some things that we think you should work on. In all those cases, though, is oftentimes, most of those cases, there's somebody internal who is usually a planner, maybe an engineer sometimes, maybe an elected official is pushing this, but a lot of times it's the internal advocate, if you will, that is looking for a way to get things done and what works in other places. So I'm really happy to tell all of you that there are communities of all shapes and sizes in every state in the country that have done this work. And okay, to varying degrees of success. That's something that we think is really important that we can all work on, and really thank you for your work. We need good planning. And we need great planners who are willing to grow and get that public input and reflect that input through your toolbox, so that you can create these public goods and outcomes for people.
So, Bill,
So,
you're trucking toward your 150th anniversary
yeah.
in
Oh,
a
right.
few
Well,
years,
yeah,
which should be a good
sure.
celebration.
Yeah, it
So,
should be. Yeah.
yeah, think about that. So, going back to
PC
Chris's
Collectors. Yeah.
question to us in terms of what's the future of bicycling? What does that next 20, 25 years look like? How do you incorporate that into the bicycle friendly program? What are you looking for from additional federal policy?
I mean, we need to be successful, we have to. I think you said it, Don. You said this. There's a lot that has happened. Let's say in the last 20 years. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the in most places, even the best places, the networks still aren't great. So, we need to build great bicycling networks, great networks for people, and it has to be. In order to do that, it has to be about accomplishing community goals, right? It can't just be about biking. It has to be about the things that biking brings those communities. So I think we need a mainstream movement. We need, if we are gonna connect those networks. I'm really glad to say that there's money. Back to the money stuff. There's money in the latest transportation bill, the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, for example. There's a lot of money that is still unused, and a lot of great money going out. That funds things like demonstration projects and planning that other funding sources just haven't done in the past. So I think some of that, trying things. I think when I think of, by the way, when I think of the planning profession, I think of, I don't know if I should say this, like not the dreamers. When you're talking with the community,
The
I feel like
lovers, the
the
dreamers, and
lovers,
me.
the dream. Yeah, no, like you think that like the engineering side of the house, they say, oh, okay, we can't do this, we can't do that. This is, we can do this, we can't. Sort of like the, let's just run your plan through the the reality machine. I don't know if that's actually true, and I'm sorry to offend anybody, but I think that planners a lot of times, and I would say engineers too, maybe, and I think the profession's growing, and at least in our transportation space. It's gotten much better. But the idea to like try things out, the experimenters, not the dreamers, but the experimenting and trying things. And you see that everywhere. Like when you look at the most developed, mature, bicycle-friendly places in the world, that's what they do. They try things out. So we need to try things out. We have to help those communities that are, we call, at the bronze level or below. For us, help them be more effective at getting to moving up, not just getting the award, but doing the things that you get recognized for when you do them. In our case, we would say moving from bronze to silver, and from silver to gold, and from gold to platinum and beyond. And I think building networks that are legible, but also the human infrastructure of like really welcoming people in. If we're gonna have a mainstream movement, it can't just be about one type of cycling. Something that you said, and it made me take a note earlier. We were talking about e-bikes and the sort of the trip distance thing. I think this is something that we as a bicycling movement have focused on for years, is the trip to work. It's the thing that's measured, right? So that's the ACS is the primary way that we measure bicycling in America. I mean, the National Household
Right,
Travel
let's stop
Survey.
at American Community Survey for
Yeah,
the.
sorry, American Community Survey. That's the main way we measure things. It's like, what's the primary way that you get to work? And that's how we're measuring success here. And we, as a movement, in a lot of places, are also telling people, hey, go ride that. An average American commute to work is like 11 miles. So ride 11 miles. I mean, it is a great day. We need a time for celebration. It is amazing what has been done in places, and it's really a lot of fun, and I can't wait to do it in a couple of months. But it's like the hardest trip. So if you don't have a friend that's going to take you along, or somebody really helping out, or a really legible and great network, or an e-bike, you're probably not going to do an 11-mile trip. And I think that the data shows that that's the same in places like the Netherlands, which has great mode share. But once you get past a 5 mile trip or so, it's like the level of ridership goes way down. I think, we have to think about, and I think we have been for the last few years, thinking about, the short trips. What are the other kinds of trips, and how do we measure those trips so that we can give people like a dashboard, how are we doing?
Yeah.
That's more real, not just based on the work trip. I've said a lot there. I think I should stop talking here. I just think that to sum it up, we need a broader movement. We have to be meeting people where they are and helping them transform their communities, and not just for the bike ride, which we know is great, but for the types of health and wellness and connectivity and cohesiveness and creating fighting climate change and the other sorts of outcomes that we all want as a society.
Well, there's lots of points, Bill. The first one is, when we talk about like um, a trip generation of a subdivision or what have you, right? We know that the typical thing is X number of trips per day coming from each house, but they're not all work trips. Yet we talk about that and we plan for that. And so I think you're right on the money. I can't move past something. I'm laughing. If you know the comedian John Mulvaney, he talked about in the throes of the Civil War, there being a gazebo somewhere
In
in like
Connecticut.
Connecticut. And it had we built this in 1863 or four, whatever it was. And he pauses and like, imagine people in the throes of the Civil War, all that was going on and the fabric of our country being torn apart, said, you know what? We need to build a gazebo and we need to build it here right now, right? It's a
Mhm.
pretty funny thing. I'm laughing because your organization is turning 150 years old. So almost similarly, like in the throes of the Reconstruction era, just after Civil War, here was all this stuff going on, and unfortunately a lot of negative things. But there were a group of people said, you know what we need to do? We need to create a league of bicycling enthusiasts and advocate for better conditions. And they did it right after that period of time. Like, man, that's pretty amazing to think. And what that original group of people, what they were up against, what they were fighting for in terms of just, improving conditions. And it makes me think about, what are we thinking about now, 150 years later, right? What are we afraid of? What are we concerned with? What's simmering on your stove, so to speak, that you're really trying hard to get ahead of and get into the Capitol and advocate, to try to make changes or even bolster? What's that arena look like these days?
Well, I mean, good question. Yeah, and you think about, the founders of our organization. I mean, the Wright brothers were members of our organization. I mean, it was like people that went on to start like car companies. Albert Pope was a huge leader in this. So yeah, I know what was going on there. I think I, there was a lot of early adoption of a new technology, right? And so when we look ahead now to answer your question and thinking about like what's next, I'm not like I'm really hopeful about the future, and yet can't we cannot take our eyes off the ball, right? And so we need to still continue to do the work that we're doing at the federal level, and make sure that we're amplifying a much more representative group of people who ride bikes um, uh, on Capitol Hill, and continue to deliver the funding and the policies that we know can improve people's lives right now. Like helping people get more physical activity into their daily lives. I mean, that's a huge thing that we can do together if we focus on this, and we know that if we can slow down our roads and build more legible bike networks and places where people can walk to, that people will be more active and they will get around more by foot and by bike. The thing is, I think about the opportunity though coming down the pipe, like we talked about e-bikes. I see a huge opportunity here. I think we need to do whatever we can to make sure that that there's education available for people who are riding e-bikes. We created with our friends at People for Bikes a class last year. We're going to continue to invest in that. We think that this is going to be a huge growth area, and we think giving people opportunities to ride on these and to ride with others is a huge way of growing cycling as a whole, and also a big I think e-bikes are going to be a big part of reaching new people, as you said early on. The other thing is, we do a lot of work in the vehicle safety space. And it's bikes aren't really as much at the table as we'd like them to be when we're talking about like the large environmental tackling the large environmental issues of the day. Of course, we think the best the best selling electric vehicle in America is an e-bike. But there's a lot more that can be done for us as a movement to try to tap into the larger, again, back to those larger goals. But I think that there's a lot of technological improvements happening around vehicles, especially in cars and trucks, like the safety of for people that are inside the vehicles, instead of it's slowly moving, and I think we're part of it. We're at the table trying to move the needle on improving the standards, showcasing those companies that are doing great things for improving safety for people outside of the vehicle. So it's an area where it at times might feel strange, like, oh wow, the bike people are in this meeting. I'm really proud to say that we are in a lot of those meetings now, and have been working with companies that are trying to improve their vehicles, and we hope that on one side that NHTSA and the federal government will set higher standards around, for example, automatic emergency braking detection for bicyclists, advanced driver assistance systems that can see and react to people who are riding bikes and who are walking. So that's one of those things that it doesn't keep me up at night, but I see a huge opportunity, and we need to make sure that we don't take our eye off this, because we don't want to end up with an even lesser portion of the way people get around by foot and by bike in the future.
So, Bill, I feel like you're giving us an awesome preview of something that's coming up on the National Bike Summit.
Yeah.
So, tell our audience kind of like, what is the National Bike Summit, especially if they've never heard of it, and like who should be engaged, and is everything that you covered kind of the focus, or is there specific focuses coming up with that?
Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for asking. So the National Bike Summit has been going on for 24 years here, it's in Washington, D.C., usually every spring. It's usually in March. It's coming up March 19th through 21st in Washington, D.C. It's a mixture of, it's bringing advocates, both professional advocates, citizen advocates, planners who do this work. It's agency folks. It's people who are trying to transform communities in their states, coming together and sharing best practices around infrastructure, around education, around new technology. And then there's also a Hill Day. We have non-lobbying stuff for folks that can't lobby, which is great. We offer content for them as well. But our day on the Hill is a huge day, and we'll have a number of asks up there. Definitely in the background is like we're preparing for that next transportation bill. But there are a number of things that are coming right now that we think are important, and we'll be sending people up on Capitol Hill to do that. But yeah, like the things that I just said are, we're going to be talking about all of those things. In addition, we're going to be doing like mobile workshops. We're in Washington, D.C. They've been doing some really great things over the last few years. So there's some opportunities to see the nation's capital up close. And I'm happy to say that DDOT, which is the local agency, and WABA, which is our local bicycling advocacy organization, and us together, we use these opportunities to showcase the stuff that's going on. So there's a lot of riding, there's a lot of sessions. You can come virtually, and we have some great speakers. Veronica Davis is going to be speaking. We have the bicycle nomad Eric Cedeno is going to be speaking. Of course, Administrator Shaylin Bott from FHWA. We're going to be presenting Congressman Blumenauer. We're going to have a big celebration for him, who's retiring at the end of the year. So it's going to be a great. It's I think people, when they walk away from it, it's like, oh, my people, we get together every year, and folks that have shared experiences of, what often feels like pushing a boulder up a hill to get things done.
For these virtual sessions, have you figured out how to use like the Peloton technology where you can do a
Yes,
virtual
well, not
ride?
Peloton,
But
but
like
we
where you can ride and listen at the same time, because
oh my God.
that kind of could be, and then like you get the Washington DC around you.
Oh my gosh. It's funny. I think we are trying. I don't want to promise anything. We are working on something like this right now. I don't think it's going to be like the perfect thing that you just said. But we do actually do virtual mobile workshops. So if you log in virtually, you probably you're going to see the cherry blossoms in full bloom, and you're going to we're doing a session on Martin Luther King in the city. Last year, we did a mobile workshop around Lincoln's commute. As some of you might know, he used to live farther up a hill. Like, he lived far away from the White House most of the time. So like, we did his commute last year. So yeah, it's a mixture of fun. Like, bicycling has to be about joy and about being together with others and all those other things. So we definitely integrate that part, but also a recognition that there's a lot of challenges that we face together. We are in this together, to make the bicycling comfortable and safe and accessible to everybody.
So here's a twisted irony too, with the history of the league and its efforts to get good roads and even standardized consolidated road authorities in the 1800s. I think you could make the case that that effort led to the creation of state DOTs, which then ironically become kind of the detriment for a long time on this front. So last piece before we move into our lightning round, Bill. Classes, trainings, other things. We always talk about planners needing to go to a conference, go to sessions outside of their wheelhouse, so to speak. So if you're like a land use planner looking at zoning stuff, but you're dealing with this stuff, go to some of the league trainings. What are those things you guys are offering, not just from like bicycling skills, but also maybe with what's happening with the new design guides?
Well, gosh, we leave it to our friends, honestly, at like NACTO and mostly NACTO and others around like the development of the design guides. I think what might be interesting to that planner, we're launching a new webinar series, so like doing like 2 a month. And so there, of course, there is the other, not like learning new skills, like how to ride confidently, not just that, but also like, what are the sorts of practices that a community needs in order to have bicycling education that's fully integrated, into their work? How do you reach new audiences through your events? How do you make sure that everybody is, at the table? What are the best bicycle friendly communities doing? What are the best state policies to slow down our roads? Like, we definitely covered those topics, and rely on probably folks in your audience, and I know folks in your network that to bring what they're doing and showcase those things. I'd say, yeah, there's a lot of free webinars. There's also the National Bike Summit has some virtual options. I think those are good places to see what's going on, what's the latest. But we also have a lot of free resources that you can say. I mean, aside from trainings, like we have, for example, last year we released the Bicycle Friendly Community Idea Book. You can get great ideas there. We released a bike audit toolkit with AARP. That's something that's free and you can download. We have a webinar on how to use that. Things like that are coming out. So I can't say it enough. Like, make sure you go to our website, and like, there's quite a lot there and that you can sign up for and download and use. And if you're interested in that data deep dive, data.bikeleague.org is our is a project that we do as part of our work with the CDC's Active People Healthy Nation initiative, which is an initiative to get 27 million more Americans more active by 2027. There's tons of data that you can like dig into that that I don't think you're getting anywhere else. So if you're trying to make the case or trying to understand what different places are doing, that's a good place to look. And I mean, look at the disparities of crashes and things like that. There's tons of data that will help you, I think, use a new lens to look at your work.
Very good. All right, Bill. Well, obviously, an incredible organization doing fabulous things on behalf of millions of people in this country and millions who aren't even riding their bikes just yet, but will be in the future, right? And so we certainly appreciate 150 years. That still just blows my mind. There aren't too many organizations in this country
There
with
are.
such longevity. All right, so we're going to turn our attention to the lightning round. I'm going to pepper you with a couple quick questions before my colleague take their sort of shot at the piñata, so to speak. Here we go. Ready? All right, here we go. I want you to name names. Who in Washington, D.C., representatives, senators, congressional reps, who rides their bikes? Who is it that you could point to that says, yeah, they do it? Anybody up on that hill that we would know?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Ayanna Presley. I mean, obviously Earl Blumenauer is like the natural leader in bike partisanship. I mean, there's a congressional bike caucus that we work with. So there's a list of people who really ride. Congressman Tom, I think you were just in the Napa area. I don't know if that's his district. Congressman Thompson in that area rides bikes, sets up regular rides. Some of our staff have ridden with him. Like, I mean, yeah. So there are members of Congress riding, and we're doing a congressional bike ride at the National Bike Summit on the 20th of March. And
Love
so
it.
yeah, we're hoping to get a few of them out.
I think you
There
should
you
do like
go.
a bike rodeo for all of them out there in front of the Capitol and
Yeah,
that, and
right
just
on.
kind of see what happens.
Yeah, I like that.
Videotape it. Videotape it.
Oh
Okay,
my
yeah, right on.
gosh.
Yeah, we will.
All right. What is your favorite DC restaurant and your go-to meal?
Gosh. Um, it's not in DC. It's in Arlington. I know, so I'm gonna get some booze there. I can hear my colleagues go. I really like Four Sisters. It's a Vietnamese restaurant in Arlington. It's awesome.
That sounds delicious. I can go
It
for some
is.
I got a
Vietnamese.
couple. I want to know more about you, Bill, that isn't necessarily just about your work.
Let's do it.
So
Yeah.
what's a talent you have that maybe people don't know? Because Commissioner Kostelik could tell you about his, but we might not have enough time.
Yeah, yeah, I play I so I in college I played drums in a couple of bands. So like, and I still play drums. Like I'm now our kids are to an age where um uh I'm not around. I don't need to be around as much. So like both my wife and I both play in bands now,
Hmm.
actually.
That's
Again.
awesome.
What
All right.
kind of
So,
music?
oh, here we
Yeah, I
go.
mean it's mostly, I mean it's a very DC punk rock band. Yeah,
Hmm.
very, very,
I didn't know
yeah,
that DC had his
originals.
own type of punk rock.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
You go to Deep Dive Discord Records, just look that up and you'll see. I mean, basically the hardcore punk scene, it was very influential on lots of musicians. I think if yeah, you do just scratch the surface there even a little bit with the DC music scene. I mean, there's tons of
Oh
great
my gosh.
musicians.
Read Dave Grohl's Storytellers, his
Huh,
book,
there you go.
and
Yeah,
he's from that area and he talks all
he
about
is.
growing up in DC with that emerging punk culture that really came through in the mid 80s and such. So yeah, it's
Absolutely.
definitely present.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
maybe one quick follow-up lightning round before Kostelik goes.
Let's do it.
So what's your go-to karaoke song then to sing, since we know you do drums?
Oh gosh. It would definitely be a Smith song. I think I can like kind of, well, I don't know if it would be now as really I pull that out. But I think, yeah. Oh God.
For the record, if you whatever you name, you might as well just sing the first line right now.
Oh no. No. I won't do that. I won't subject you to that. I don't know. It would probably be that, or probably be like, I'm from Florida, so there's tons of southern rock bands from Florida. So like, I don't know, like an Allman Brothers song or something, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
All right.
A new one coming up of I love for a while, JJ Gray and Mofro, if you know them, a Florida band, kind of a swamp rock
Wow.
kind of thing. Yeah, check him out. So your two-parter here, your last vacation, where was it? And how many bicycling related pictures did you come home with from that vacation?
Oh my God. I went home for Christmas. We went home back to Florida for Christmas, and um I don't even call them bicycling related pictures. I mean, it's usually like pictures of infrastructure that I don't like most of the time. To be totally honest, I'm
For
like,
the record,
what?
that is on all of our phones.
Like,
All of us.
what is this? Like circle, circle, circle. Am I allowed to share this? Like that kind of thing often happens. Why is this bike lane? Why is this what looks like a 3-foot bike lane on a 55-mile-an-hour road? Like things like that. Most of my photos are that, except for like some really good things that are happening. Like for example, in Tampa, I have to give a shout out to Tampa and St. Petersburg doing amazing work. And yeah, some of my photos are like of like really clever things that they're doing. So I have to give a shout out to them. But and there's lots of where I'm from. I love I love to take photos no matter where I'm going of things that surprise me in all sorts of ways.
Well, yeah, for the folks out there, Tampa, St. Pete, it's kind of two different places, but
Yeah.
don't knock St. Pete. I think it's a place that kind of invented the rectangular rapid flash beacon.
Yeah.
They drove a lot of the early Florida DOT complete streets things that I think for its time was the best we knew. So yeah. All
Totally.
right.
Yeah.
Last one, Chris.
Totally.
It's a softball. It's real easy, but I want you to paint a picture. Tell us about your very first bike.
Okay, my first bike. Okay, so my first bike was a really basic green bike, but it went away very quickly. I don't know what it was. It's like the first bike I learned to ride on. This my first memory is this army green bike. But my first bike that I really loved was a red line. It had
Oh man.
it had purple mags. I was totally like I was like purple. I was definitely BMX guy. Had pegs on the back. I was like making jumps in my on our cul-de-sac street. I mean, it was like very much like sort of 80s kind of that was my freedom machine. And I wish I could have that bike back. Although I can imagine my kids laughing at me as I try to like fit myself on it. But I'm confident I could still bunny hop, even today, 48
Yeah.
years old. I can do it. Come on.
Have you watched the movie Rad in the
Oh,
last?
are you
I
kidding?
mean,
in the last like 5 years, no, but like definitely in the last 10.
if anybody in our audience, and I know I'm dating myself, but by the enthusiasm that Bill supported that question, I'm guessing we're a similar age. But for poor Don, he was in a cave during the 80s, so he didn't
Yeah,
really
I have
know
no
much.
recollection or knowledge of it.
The movie Rad is a cult classic about bicycling, but specifically about BMX bicycling.
Yeah.
And it starred Bart Connor, who was fresh off of his 1984 US gymnastic win or whatever he had at the Olympic Games. And the other, I forgot what her name is, Lori something. She was in Family. Yeah, you know her and some other people, these twins that played like these evil guys on mongoose bikes that
Oh my God. It's so good.
and it was a obstacle course, and it's all the glorious of a good 80s cheesy cult classic. So go listen or watch Rad, and if you can find it, and I think that you'll appreciate it. But
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Bill, we appreciate your time. Everybody, Bill Nesper, Executive Director of the League of American Bicyclists, thank you for your work as well as everybody else involved in the league. And to our audience, just as a reminder, head on over to www.theplanningcommissionpodcast.com. Like, subscribe, and write us an email and give us some feedback. We appreciate it. To my fellow commissioners, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. Hey, everybody. Commissioner Danley here. Would you like to see more? Hear more? Well, we got you covered. Go to our website, www.theplanningcommissionpodcast.com. It's got everything you want. Guests, yep, past episodes, video, the audio, even our whiskey pairing, links to everything about all the people we've had on, books, websites, you name it. It's unbelievable. If you want to reach out to us, please. We'd be more than happy to chat. You can email us, planningcommissionpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to tweet at us, go for it, @planningcommish. We're also on YouTube with the Planning Commission Podcast channel, Facebook. Heck, send us a carrier pigeon if you need to. We'd love to hear from you about ideas, guests, you name it. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it. We'll keep doing our thing. You keep doing yours. Have a good one.